Misho Baraka, ladies and gentlemen. Cultural Christianity has become widely accepted. When we were younger, you knew the difference between somebody who truly loved the Lord and somebody who lived it culturally. But its proximity to politics now has made it even more difficult to detach people from, like, this is not a real faith, my friend. You're associating yourself with a Christendom that I think Jesus would flip tables over in this space if he were here.
If an artist is saying, I'm doing this for ministry, and they get 2 requests on the same day. One is a music fest with 20,000 kids, right? And they pay $30,000.
Okay, now you're talking.
Another option is a church in the inner city of Philly.
Now you're talking.
That could pay $750, right?
Talk to me nice.
And give you a couch to sleep on.
Talk to me nice, right?
There's
no comparison. Let's just say I come to prominence during the discipleship era, but disciple making falls off, and now it's church planting. Well, maybe they'll find like, oh, Brian died, he plants churches, let me have it. But for some reason, they still want me to come because my name is big, and they know I'll draw people. I ain't plant one church, but they want me to come and speak on church planting. Well, now we're doing race reconciliation. I may be racist, but they're going to have me come speak because I'm going to draw some people, right? And I think the celebrityism that I think happens there within Christianity is going to be the death. Well, it has been. It is the death of us. It's part of the empire thinking. And I think you would go to a conference and you would see the same rotation of speakers.
Welcome to another episode of Legacy Disciple Podcast, where we normalize disciple making. Today I'm with a old friend of 21 years. We were just talking about this. Misho Lewis, also a.k.a. Sho Baraka.
Don't ever use my last name.
No.
I'm Misho Baraka, ladies and gentlemen. Nice, okay.
Your social security number is?
5.
Yeah. So the first question I always ask people is just share your life, of faith, and just what brought you to Jesus, key people, key events.
Mm-hmm. Well, Brian Dye actually brought me to the faith. I was parading as a Christian until I met him, and then finally the Spirit of the Lord. I grew up in a house that was primarily focused on like sports, I can say. And if it wasn't sports, it was just a bunch of other things. And so my father disappeared for many years of our lives, and this was probably like late elementary, junior high for me. And then when he came back, he just was like, hey, let's take a ride around the city. And I was just in the car, and he was just bawling his eyes out, like apologizing for his absence. Well, come to find out, like, I didn't understand it at that time, but he had become a Christian. And so he was basically, this was his repentance. But I actually started to see like a real change in his life, because eventually I would move from living with my mother to living with him. And if I would wake up early in the morning to go to school, I would see him at the table reading his Bible. And I'd be like, why is he reading the Bible? Like, he ain't a preacher. You know, that's kind of like the mindset I had. Around the same time, I have an older brother, Dahadi, who you know, obviously, who became a Christian in college. And so I had these two influences in my life. And so before I went to Tuskegee, my father was like, well, you should spend the summer with your brother. And so the summer before my freshman year, I spent with Dahadi, and Dahadi had me in all kind of discipleship groups, reading all kind of books, like 30 Days Understanding the Bible. And so that kind of had an impact on me, because when I went to Tuskegee, I was trying to have a good time, sir. I was trying to enjoy myself. And so that year ends. My sophomore year comes around, and I spend that summer with Dahadi again. And this time he's really like starting to say, hey man, you should listen to this hip, because he knew I love rap. He's like, hey, you should listen to these rappers. So he gave me like the Cross Movement CDs, Grits, Corey Red, Precise. And then he would always talk about this conference called Impact. And he's like, bro, I promise you would love it. And I was like, if it has anything with Jesus, I'm not going to love it. And so once again, summer of small groups, summer of like Bible studies. But I will say this, I would go to church with my father, and the experience that I had with my brother, Dahadi, and the college students who loved the Lord was much different than going to church with my father. Like, I felt like these people understood the culture. I can connect with them. I could be myself around them in some ways still. And so it was something indelible. It was something impressionable about being around them. I was like, yo, they're kind of cool. And so Dahadi has always been my hero. And so he said, hey, man, I know you're going to go home. You're going to go to school. You're going to do your thing. Just promise you can start going to a Bible study. I was like, I'll do that. And I was a man of my word. So get back my sophomore year. One of the first Tuesdays, well, before that, I'm in one of my classes. It's the first class, and the introductory class, people stand up, say, tell us your name, who you are, where you from. This brother named Eddie Chambers stood up. He said, first giving honor to God, blah, 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 blah. And he starts talking, and he's like, man, I love the Lord. And all the girls was like, I see. And I was like, I want that. Whatever that. Like, if the girls that's what I need. So I walked up to him. I was like, hey, man, what Bible study you go to? And he's like, oh, man, you can come. It's Tuesday night. It's called Campus Outreach. I was like, all right, yeah, I'm going to come through. So I went to the Bible study. Literally, the first day, the guy, brother named Byron Johnson, rolls out a TV, because that's how old we were. He rolled the TV out. He rolled out a TV. He was like, I want to show y'all this conference that's coming up, and we're taking signups today, and it's Impact Conference. And I'm like, yo, that's the conference my brother talks about. But in the promo video, they're like starting the cross movement. And I was like, yo, that's the CD my brother gave me. And so afterwards, I walked up to Byron. I was like, yo, man, I know you don't know me. It's my first time coming, but I'm interested in going to this conference. But the problem is I don't have no money. So I'm going to need somebody to like sponsor. And he was like, well, just keep coming to Bible study. We'll see. Long story short, December comes around. Right before the conference, he's like, I got you. I'll sponsor you to go, because I had been consistently going to the Bible study. I go to the conference. Literally, my brother's there, and he brought a bunch of students from North Texas. I think it was the first morning, Pastor James White from North Carolina preaches a sermon about divine distinction. It's basically about the passion of the Christ. And this was the first time that I had ever heard anybody really like say, you have a responsibility for putting Jesus on the cross. And what are you going to do about it? And I'm just sitting there just like, I don't know what to say, pray. I'm just like, my heart is grieved for Jesus. I know there's a lifestyle that I'm living that goes against these things. Like, what do I do? And then I remember, oh, my brother's here. I can just ask him questions, talk to him. And so I go to him. I'm like, hey, man, I think I'm a Christian, but I don't know what to do. And he's like, yo, so we talked for hours. Then another brother walks in the room who also says that, he had become a Christian, which was Lecrae. And so that's how we met. My brother's like, yeah, y'all should connect and meet each other. So this is a conference. And then the one thing I realized is like, well, I have an apartment back home with this young lady. I got to figure out how to go back home to this sinful life that I'm living. Like, but while I was there, I soaked it up. I went to every session. I was loving it. But that was my conversion story. And I just knew, like, from that point on, I made it my effort just to make the Lord known and to know him.
You talked about your brother, for those who don't know, Dahadi Lewis, who planted Blueprint Church in Atlanta. Yes. Also is really kind of a pastor of pastors in many senses.
Absolutely.
Helped to invest in a lot of leaders over the years.
Absolutely.
So shout out to Dahadi Lewis.
I will say this, I would even go as far as say one of the unsung heroes of like the whole Christian, not only Christian hip hop movement, but I would also say like the church planning, the black church planning, black reformed, if you will, and restless movement as well. Doesn't get enough props, but I'm gonna give it to you, bro.
Yeah. You mentioned Lecrae, and people will be familiar with that name, now in 2026. Right. But you're talking about a Lecrae that was unknown at the time,
right? Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Was just kind of doing some mixtapes and
right. This is before the mixtapes. This was So a few years later, I leave Alabama. I'm at Tuskegee. I leave Alabama, and I go to school at University of North Texas. And so we become roommates, and that's where, like, I mean, his name wasn't even Lecrae. His name was Vision at the time. And
but Lecrae is his like birth name.
His name was but his rap name was Vision. And he was like, "Yo, man, I'm thinking
a lot better."
His real name is Bartholomew. So if y'all want to just irk him, just call him Bartholomew. And he started saying like, "Yo, I really want to take this seriously." And so we were, Tadashi was a roommate of ours as well. Tadashi had moved from Waco, and because he was at school in Baylor and started going to school at University of Texas. We were being discipled by my brother, another brother named James Roberson, who's a pastor in New York, in Brooklyn. And man, we were just people. And the main reason why we wanted to do music is because we saw the damage we had created on our campuses by preaching and promoting poison. And so we were like, well, what better way to undo this but by preaching the gospel, by taking the same medium that we all love, that people connect with, but putting a message of hope, of redemption, of love into it. And so he got serious first, and he was like, cut a demo. And then a brother named Ben Washer joined the fray because he went to the same churches we were going to. He went to the same church as us, and then accelerated this whole idea of starting Reach Records. And that was around, I think, 2003, 4 maybe.
Yeah. And I got to meet you guys pretty early on in
Yeah.
those first years. So you've been in the Christian hip hop scene for quite some time. Again, when Reach kind of came on the coattail of Cross Movement.
Right.
Before that, you kind of had you mentioned Grits and some
Right.
other
Yep.
groups. You saw Cross Movement to Reach Records to what it's become now.
Yeah.
And I know you're not gonna have all the answers of all the in and outs of
Right.
everything, but from your perspective as someone who's been in this journey for a while, what have been some of the adaptations?
Yeah.
What would have been some of the things to praise? What are some of the things where you're like, man, if you could speak to an artist today who's trying to honor God,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
I think it's important that you bring up our proximity to the Cross Movement, because in those early 2000s, in the early aughts, what we saw was, well, what happened is that Dallas Theological Seminary was right close to us. And so Eric Mason went there, and he would come back and visit to speak. And
Eric Mason's now a pastor.
I'm sorry, I need to stop acting as if
Epiphany.
people. Yeah. So I'll give the information. You do the commentary. And so Deuce, who is one of the founding members of the Cross Movement, was also in seminary and living in Dallas at the time. And so our retreats that we would have, Deuce would come and speak, because he and Dahadi, my brother, were classmates. And so we not only were we learning from them musically, like literally we were being discipled by them in presence as well. And so our affection for music grew not only because of what they were doing, but our affection for the Lord, most importantly, was cultivated because of that proximity as well. And the fact that we were a Bible study that became a college ministry that became a church. And so the connection to the local church was not an option. This was not something that was negotiated. Like, we were artists who were tethered to the local church, and our responsibilities were to be present and to share life with them, and not to be superstars, but to be people who are being discipled and to partake in the disciple making process. And we got that, I think, in a lot of ways, not only because we're of the local church, but because of like the cross movements. And I think what we did as we continue to grow, as the Lord opened up opportunities and people kind of flirted with us and like giving us opportunity and stages and started to expand our reach, I think we started to see this not just as, and I don't know how people are going to take this. It became more than just ministry. This actually became vocation. Like, we started to really understand this as something that we wanted to master and to be experts in. So where we may have thought like some folks wanted to be pastors and Christian rappers, the majority of us, let me say, didn't see ourselves as vocationally being pastors. We saw ourselves vocationally being artists and creatives. And so what did that look like? And so then that led us towards a trajectory of being folks who were primarily focused on how do we keep the fidelity of the scriptures and the church, but at the same time make excellent art. Like, we want to be great artists. We don't want to be a derivative of Lil Wayne and T.I. or Common. We want people to say, yo, their music is just as good. And the only reason why you don't want to listen to us is because we're talking about Jesus, not because of the quality of the music. And I think we sustained that for a while. I think that became a thing. I think what happens is the intoxication of that became a little too much for us to handle, in the sense that now the primary focus became more of brand than righteousness, of who we can associate rather than what does it mean to labor along brothers and sisters who their music may not be as good as we want it to be, but we know their heart is in the right place. And so I even lament some of the ways in which I communicated my departure from Reach and my departure from some of the relationships. I wish I would have been more mature about how I did, because I think what happens is no matter if you are directly discipling a person to do a certain thing, people learn by what they catch and sometimes they learn bad habits by not being able to hear you say, like, no, I may not be good at this, but don't do it this way, do it a different way. And so you may see me engage in the mainstream market. You may see a Lecrae, or you may see people engage in ways that looks enticing, but they're doing it with a different heart posture. And I think that became the emphasis for the people who followed us. And so now I think, and this is just an observation, I'm not saying everybody's like this, where there was a fidelity for just the scripture and people to make okay, good, decent art. We took it as we're going to have a fiduciary responsibility to the scripture, or fidelity towards the scriptures. We're also going to have fidelity to, and I'm not trying to make them equivalent, but we're going to be dope artists. Where other folks came after us is like, well, if the doper I am, the more opportunity I'll have, the more spaces I can get into. And here's the thing. C.S. Lewis has a quote that I think is really interesting. He says, don't allow your talents to take you where your heart can't sustain. And I think a lot of artists are living that out. Like their talents are getting them in spaces where their heart and their character can't resist the temptations of the world. And I think that's a little tragic, maybe.
Yeah. You're in town to do a talk tonight on empire, basically, with Malcolm Foley.
Yeah.
And the idea of empire is, our world is really driven by the dollar, by fame, notoriety, right, status, so forth. And it's challenging when business and ministry try to marry each other, because one will usually win out over on the other, right? And so what's your thoughts on, man, I'll just ask this question. No. Can somebody who wants to be a Christian artist, should they, let's say, would you recommend them to make a living off of their art?
Yeah.
Or should art be more of a hobby, or is there like a hybrid answer to that?
Let me address something you said before. You said there are times when the business and the ministry, and I don't know if ministry was the right word, but where there is this tussle and one wins out over the other. My argument is that ministry never wins. I don't think the system is set up for ministry to win at all. That doesn't mean that you can't do some forms of aspects of business. That doesn't mean to me that ministry is never good when it's operating in the industry. What I'm saying is, if you are a business, you are a business. That's the bottom line. If you are a ministry, you are a ministry. And I'm learning that as I get older, that the trying to walk that tightrope, you're always going to fall off, because it's just not I don't think mammon it doesn't play fair. And mammon is, the word that Jesus uses for money in the scriptures. Because it's a god. And as he says in Matthew 6, he says you can't serve both God and mammon. And I think what we've tried to do is to make it so where we can exist in this empire, do ethical business, and still hold a fidelity to the scriptures. Now, have people done it? Yes. But what I'm saying is just say that you're a business, because there are certain rules in which you can operate, or there are certain rules that you have to operate in order to be successful in what you're doing. As a Christian artist, if I went out and I gave all my music out for free, I did not charge. I'm not saying that Christian artists should do this, but if I said I'm making gospel-centered Jesus Christ-centered music, and I want everybody to have it, and I'm not going to charge, I'm just going to give it out for free, and I'm going to do all my shows for free, that is terrible business practices. Like you just can't survive that way. And a record label will drop you quickly, because It doesn't help the bottom line, the business. That's what ministry should be doing. And in a lot of ways, that's what the church did in antiquity, where they patronized, they sponsored people to do work. And so the artist didn't have to worry about making a living, building a brand. The artist was free to go do the things that they were passionate about because the church said, we want beauty in the world. And so therefore, go do that thing. What happens is when Mammon or the empire gets a hold of a thing, they make it look as close as possible to a biblical lifestyle without you feeling like you're actually violating biblical principles. And so you're operating in this business mindset, and you're thinking you're doing real ministry, and then in some ways you're doing good work. And I don't want people to make it seem I want you can do good charitable work. You can serve people in business in every economic system, but it's not the way in which I would say the Bible describes it. That's not ministry. That's not the life of Jesus. So, long way to get to your question. I think an artist should do whatever they want to do as long as they have a sober perspective of knowing what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Just know what you're doing.
Yeah. I think, there's some churches that have coffee shops, right? And they're able to offer the coffee low price. They're able to hire whoever, someone who's just out of jail, and who's going to mess up the drinks and so forth, right?
But it's for a good cause, though.
But it's for a good cause, right?
This coffee terrible, but we're glad this brother down the streets.
But if that church is offsetting the cost, then you could operate like that, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think what we're getting at is if an artist is saying, I'm doing this for ministry, and they get two requests on the same day, one is a music fest with 20,000 kids, right? And they pay $30,000.
Okay, now you're talking.
Another option is a church in the inner city of Philly.
Now you're talking.
That could pay $750, right?
Talk to me nice.
And give you a couch to sleep on.
Talk to me nice, right? There's no comparison. There's no, and if I want to be really transparent, this is where I'll just say this is where in an area of my life where there were certain festivals that were being thrown at me,
mm-hmm.
And the reason why you made this music is because I went to a HBCU. I was on a college campus when I felt like the call of my life to make music came to be. And you really made the music because you saw a bunch of yourselves out in the crowd. You're like, man, we're being poisoned. I want to give them an alternative. Well, you do that, but you do it to, and this is the problem with success. You do that to great success. Then you leave the thing that your heart's passion was for, because other people are like, man, I see what you're doing. I have some other people over here that want to hear what you're doing. And guess what? We could probably pay you 3 times as much. And at some point, and this is the reason why your favorite artist's second album is trash compared to their first album, because their first album is about the passion, about the heart. As I think it was Willie Nelson said, the first album is written in the bar on napkins with tears. The second album is written on a tour bus.
Mm-hmm.
Your life changes,
mm-hmm.
and the things you're passionate about changes. And so then you begin to concern yourself, I need to write music in order to stay here now. Because now I want to keep the festivals. Mm-hmm. Now I want to continue to get the $30,000. And so now it's like, although First Street Baptist in Philly wants me, it's like, I'll do those occasionally out of charity, but that can't be my regular rotation. And in your heart, you just become a different person.
Mm-hmm.
And then you become bigger than the actual call on your life, and you want to sustain it, and that influences who you partner with, that influences the decisions you make, and then and so like it's troubling.
And I don't want to pretend that this is like there's a clean cut answer here for every single artist, right? That this is not complicated, because bills need to get paid, right?
Absolutely.
You need to send your kids to college. You want your kids to have better than you had.
I have a controversial view on that too, but I would say yes. Just for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to say yes, Brian.
In general, right?
You want to be able to provide for your kids.
You don't want to sleep on couches for every single concert you do, right?
But when is enough? I think that's the question. It's not necessarily Do we need to? It's like, when is enough? And Malcolm Foley has this wonderful definition of greed. He says, greed is when desire outstrips need. In America, desire always outstrips need. 90% of the things that we attain and we strive for, we don't need it. We just want it. And reason why we live in debt is because our neighbors have something and we was like, well, let me have that too. Like, and so, yes, I agree. We do need to make money in a sense to survive. But the conditions in which we put ourselves in sometimes, to me, especially within the Christian space and churches, I think about the buildings that some of these churches have. Like, and you wonder why they're not doing more work in the community. It's like, well,
You got to upkeep the building.
yeah, it's like, well, you spending millions of dollars on this building. Like, so anyway, I'm sorry I cut you off. I just felt like let me say this too. I am an ideologue. So I do have a bunch of ideas and views that me, myself, I wrestle with actually living. But I am trying to move in that direction. And, that doesn't mean I shouldn't view them and share them. And I think even more so, I should share them so that people will hold me accountable publicly.
Yeah. And again, this extends way beyond just artists.
Yeah, absolutely.
It extends beyond even pastors or church leaders. It extends to the average Christian, right, who may have grown up in poverty and now gets used to basic needs being met and being able to eat out and go to a nice coffee shop and so forth. But what becomes acceptable today may not be acceptable next year, right?
That's good.
And so I think that's what you're hitting on, is there's always this aspiration for more, and that's what gods do. That's what idolatry does, or idols do.
Amen.
Is that you never have enough of said thing.
Come on.
And so now we step over other people,
Yes.
where God's heart is always the poor, the marginalized, the forgotten, the fatherless, the widow. And now it becomes where our focus is on us, right? And the more you take of that drug, the more, again, it controls you. And you can look back at your life and be like, how did I get to this place, right?
Can I interject?
Yeah.
So, and it's such a subtle thing too. Like, what I'm saying is I can walk into 90% of churches and I can tell that they're doing things that, like, nobody's intentionally ignoring the individual who's on the Damascus Road or the Jericho Road, who's been beaten. But we're so busy with our own agendas that or our lifestyles, that we ignore them. Two very practical examples. When we first planted our church in Atlanta, the church that I was a part of, I led a small group that got to size about 30 people. And we would think about, well, what could we do as a missional community? How can we reach these folks and do these things and as a group? Because we always wanted to have some synergy. And I remember one day, I think it was like, all right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to this park and we're going to like buy this stuff and we're going to serve these people. I mean, the idea is very noble. But I remember one of the families pulled me to the side and it was like, hey, we are like struggling with gas money. So I know like we really want to help, but we got to make a decision. We either have enough gas to get to work and school tomorrow, or we won't be able to make it to this event. And the whole time I'm sitting there like, yo, I'm just assuming everybody has the resources to do these things. And the same thing happens when our church, you've been to Blueprint. Blueprint is now, what it is now was not what it was, the neighborhood is not what it was maybe 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, it was kind of middle to lower class. And when I say lower, like projects, like surrounding the church. Now they built something what's called the Pont City Market, millions of dollar expansion. Now they're like $1 million homes all around our church. But there's still a lot of blightedness within walking distance. And one of the things we say is we want everybody in the community to be a part of the church. But preachers and people who attend, especially kind of like middle class, college educated churches, you got to understand that when somebody walks in and they see everybody dressed in fear of God, attire and the newest Jordans, and they may not be dressed in suits, but they look fresh. And then the language you use on the stage, like that is intimidating to people. And we've had people say, "Yeah, but I don't fit in here." It's like, "What do you mean? We want you here. We do things." But it's like, yeah, it's like it doesn't matter if you tell somebody come as they are. When they walk in and they can sense like I don't belong here. I don't understand that word you just used. You use references about college and I've never been to college. And it's just like I'm not saying like people should stop being educated, but just know who you are and know the context in which you are. And if you're trying to reach people, I you can't just speak to them. You need to speak from them. You need to allow them to speak from them to you as well. And I'm talking to you, but this is something that I believe that you've done and you do. And so if anything, I feel like you should be ranting right now how to do this. But I've seen you do this, and it's just amazing. And at some point, I want to get to a place where I praise you. So don't try to avoid it, because I do think there's a new model of what I believe church should look like that I think looks more like what you've been doing for the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Let's
talk about that. All right, cool. Then let's
not right now. Let's transition a little bit, because Legacy Conference started in 2007. You've been part of the whole journey, from the beginning.
Yeah.
And we were just recollecting, remembering memories. And in 2000, it would have been around 2005, we started getting to know each other. We did a one-day training for youth workers here in Chicago on disciple making.
Mm-hmm.
Had Lecrae come out, who again just released Real Talk. Mm-hmm. So he was doing concerts with 50 kids and sleeping on someone's couch, right?
Right.
And then Soup Campbell, who discipled myself and Lecrae.
Saw him like 2 months ago, I think.
Yeah. And another guy who's spiritually invested in me, Dan Ball. Yeah. And you came and you were doing the video.
I was a video guy back then. Yeah,
you were the video guy.
I was at school for video and television. Yeah,
I don't think you did an album yet.
I had done a couple songs on the compilation album, but the album, my first album, came out in 2007.
Yeah,
I was adamant about not rapping at that point.
One of the youth workers in the room, this was like 50, 60 youth workers, was a guy you went to college with, Jonathan Brooks.
Yes.
Who's now a pastor here in Chicago. And it was those youth workers who started dreaming of a conference. Mm-hmm. And out of that, we did Heavyweights Conference, which is more teen-focused, in 2006, and then the conference in 2007.
Yes.
So you've taught workshops at the conference. You've done concerts at the conference. Yes. You've been around for a while. Let's pull away from the artistry, the artist perspective. But just what have you seen like in the Christian culture and the Christian climate from early 2000s to now? Again, what's encouraging you? Right. Maybe what's scaring you a little bit?
Oh man,
you alluded a little bit to church. Even what kind of church do the alphas and the Gen Z, what's going to reach them with churches, ministry, so forth?
Yeah, I'm not really an expert on the generational exegesis or competencies, but I will say the first thing that came to mind is both the same thing that I'm excited about is the same thing that I think can handicap, I guess you could say, the church, is that you and I can probably trace from like the early 2000s up to today what the emphasis of the church is. So like in the early 2000s, it was like missions, and then it became discipleship, and then it became church planning, and then it became like race and racial reconciliation. Now we're in this space of like justice and just kind of, and maybe now like just do you, I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is now. We kind of probably on the tail end of the justice, moving into something different. And I think in some ways that can be great because people get baptized in a particular topic and you get to learn a lot. And those things that are sometimes emphasized, no matter who's leading it, though it can be skewed and manipulated depending on who's the main voices. Like I remember like when I first became a Christian, missions. I was like, send me wherever. I'm going. I was like, I'll die tomorrow for the Lord. And then it was like, let's make some disciples then. That's all I'm gonna do is where's my man? I'm gonna get me some guys. We're gonna disciple. And then it was church plants. I was like, yep, I want to be a part of some church plants. Let's make the gospel known in the city. And around that time, that's when I started to be like, you know what? Kind of these hobby horses are starting to get on my nerves. Because then what happens also is, let's just say show Baraka. Let's just say I come to prominence during the discipleship era, and I'm really doing discipleship. Like I truly am. I'm a disciple. Like I'm a disciple maker. But disciple making falls off, and now it's church planting. Well, maybe they'll find like, oh, Brian died. He plants churches. Let me have it. But for some reason, they still want me to come because my name is big, and they know I'll draw people. I ain't plant one church, but they want me to come and speak on church planting. Well, now we're doing race reconciliation. I may be racist, but they're going to have me come speak because I'm going to draw some people, right? And I think the celebrityism that I think happens there within Christianity is going to be the death. Well, it has been. It is the death of us. It's part of the empire thinking that I think you would go to a conference and you would see the same rotation of speakers and you'd be like, I really don't think this person has any clue like what they're talking about, but they may be wise on just they understand the gospel. But if we're going to learn about justice, why is this person speaking? You know what I'm saying? And so in situations like that, I think that is both, I guess you can say, a blessing and a curse of the industry that we make out of the church circuit. So I am not as pessimistic though. Like there are certain reports depending on who you read. Ryan Burge is a guy who does a lot of research on the church. He talks about how it's not really like a revival that's happening. As some people will say, there is a revival, but I think one of the greater problems. You know what? Actually, this is another problem. I think cultural Christianity has become widely accepted, more accepted than it was, I think, when we were younger, where you can call out, like you knew the difference between somebody who truly loved the Lord and somebody who lived it culturally. But its proximity to politics now has made it even more difficult to detach people from, like, this is not a real faith, my friend. You're associating yourself with a Christendom that I think Jesus would flip tables over in this space if he were here. And I think that to me is a problem. But I will say, I think there is a curiosity in young folks that I'm interested in. There's an authenticity that's maybe different from us because we didn't share our emotions because our parents didn't share their emotions. Mm-hmm. And so we're the generation that kind of have gotten to the place that allowed the younger folks to share their emotions because we were like, yeah, we can see the benefit of it, but I ain't going to do it. And so they are authentic. They're going to keep it real. They overshare in some ways. You know what I'm saying? And in some ways they are too sensitive. Mm-hmm. But I do think that's going to be helpful to bring a healthy church that is honest about its struggles, because we talked about this off camera about so many people falling off from the faith, people that we've loved dearly. I think part of that is because the church hasn't given folks the space to lament and doubt, to be honest about where they're feeling or what they're feeling. And if I give people in my church a space to doubt regularly, then they can be open. They can say, well, you know what, this sucks. You know what I'm saying? Even allow them to use different language. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They can be like, man, I'm struggling to believe that the Lord is faithful in this moment. And without me saying, whoa, stop that. You know what I'm saying? And if you give people that space, then maybe we probably wouldn't see a high fall off, because now they feel like this is a space for them to process this. And we're, instead of fixing people immediately, we're just allowing space for them to grieve and to share grief about what they're going through and to love on them in proximity.
Yeah. There's so as we read the Psalms, oftentimes the writer of Psalms, David or somebody else, would ask these questions. God, where are you? Absolutely. My enemies are surrounding me. Yes.
Good. That's good word.
And then, but by the end of the Psalm, right, it's like, oh God, you are my rock, you are my fortress. And And we think that the writer just penned that within, a couple minutes, but
That's good.
it might have taken that author a year
Come on.
to
Yeah.
get to that conclusion.
That's good.
Right?
That's good.
And so we need to give space for people to doubt, to ask questions, to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Genuine feelings.
Yeah. If they're a good songwriter, it took a while.
Yeah.
If they use Chat GPT, it probably took.
And let God respond over time, right?
Yes.
The Great Commission, Matthew 28 passage, it says, when the disciples came to the mountain in Galilee, they worshiped, but then it says some doubted. And you're like, but this crew saw his raising from the dead. They saw his miracles. They saw his multiplying the food.
Come on.
And yet they're still doubting.
Still.
But what's beautiful about that is that in their doubts they came to Jesus, right? And so, how do we create safe?
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to answer this per se, but how do we create safe spaces for people to come with their questions, come with their doubts, and not be hushed, not be judged for it, but
the one thing
sit with it.
Yeah, the one thing I would recommend is a couple things. Is that we wouldn't be so programmatic, because I think when you have structures that aren't flexible, and
hey, this Bible study is only an hour. We're running out of time right
exactly.
now.
Yeah. But we got to get back to Ephesians 2.
Yeah.
So amen, brother. But I gotta show everybody that I can preach this word.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the issue, is that the Quakers have a wonderful tradition of silence that I think more evangelical and Protestant traditions should practice. And it's just you come to a space and there's no show. There's no program. It's like, Lord, we are here. Do your work. And maybe we just sit in silence. I want to say it was John Mark Comer who said this. He said that Protestants or evangelicals are just not good with silence. And you think about it, you're like, you walk into a church, the music's loud, it's a show. It's like, because we feel the best way to convert a person is to convert their centuries, not their soul. It's like, oh, this is a Coldplay concert. It's like, well, therefore Jesus is good then. You know what I'm saying? He's a good Lord because, everything was yellow. And rather than us saying like, yo, what about the soul though? What about the quietness of the soul? How do we reach that? So I would say we got to allow that. And then I don't know. I love the idea of having moments of lament. And if you want to call moments of include doubt in there, like prayer, like times where people can just pray, lament, and just have those Psalms moment. Like, Lord, it's hard for me to trust you right now. Without some 10 people in my church coming and lay hand and rebuke that out of me. You know what I mean?
Good. Well, we're both closer to the fourth quarter of life than the first quarter. You got some.
So
gray,
we're in the third quarter. What are we? Are we in the third, or is it the fourth?
We might be in the middle of the third quarter.
Okay, I was like, as long as I'm not in the fourth. Goodness gracious, I never thought of it like that.
But we have more of our life behind us probably than ahead of us, right?
Yeah, I would say.
What?
I would say probably.
Your days of doing a whole bunch of concert tours are probably done, right?
Yes. Yes.
What's the next stage of life look like for Show Baraka?
I love that question. So one of the things I wanted, music is not. I mean, so my last album, Midnight of a Culture, which came out 2025.
You could check it out, okay, on Apple, Spotify, wherever
YouTube.
music.
You can actually purchase it on Bandcamp as well if you want to actually get I don't have any vinyl yet, but vinyl will be coming. Maybe. I don't know. I don't really care. 9 years between that album and The Narrative, which was in 2016. So I've already kind of recognized that the Lord is cultivating me in a direction away from music. But I still love creative writing. I still love creative work. And so what I think my next move is two things. To move more into the intellectual slash writing space. And that's creative writing, but that's also like intellectual journalism. Because I just love writing. I love thinking deeply about whether it be politics, social issues, opinion, culture, and just writing about it. Also, I just believe if I have any influence, I want Black people to write more, especially Black creatives, to not just use the oratory skills. We kill on stage speaking, we kill on videos doing YouTube video, but man, write. We need to write because in a lot of ways that's how people will remember us. Um, and there's a certain respect in the academic space that comes with writing versus just speaking. No, I'm not trying to belittle the oral tradition of the African American history, but I'm just saying I do think there is something about. And if we think about it, a lot of why we know about Europe, North Africa, Asia is because they wrote their history. You know, and I do think there's a beauty in the oral tradition because we are very communicative people and we get that from our oral tradition. But I would say we probably should start thinking about writing. So that's one. The other thing is I do still like performance, but I don't like rap performance. And so I've been working on a one-man show for a while. And I wrote two musicals that one was about Martin Luther King's, well, it was about the sanitation worker strike in Memphis in 1968, which led to Martin Luther King's death, but it wasn't about Martin Luther King at all. And then there's another one about that's more an original piece. And so those things have been like in me, and I'm starting to get them out. When I was a young kid, I always wanted to write stories, novels, fiction, and so I'm starting to get back to that. So yeah, that's who I am. I think about. I'm kind of like there's a desire for me to be a mix of like Malcolm Gladwell, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and like Lorraine Hansberry. So it's kind of yeah. It's
And
just
for the last couple of years, you've been an editor. Is that the title that you would have?
editorial director. So I'm not an
Editorial
editor. Yeah,
director.
editorial director.
Which you're not only writing, then you're directing other people and writing
Yes,
their
yes,
articles for
right.
Christianity Today.
Yeah.
Have there been any articles that you have written lately that you've been excited about?
Yeah, many.
Yeah,
The last article I wrote was when Trump accidentally posted that video that had the Obamas as primates. I wrote an article for that that basically communicated either Trump is a racist individual or the most unfortunate racist things happen to orbit around him. But altogether, people who support him need to reevaluate their support, especially Christians. There's another article I wrote about MLK's legacy and the controversy around how people split his identity into different compartments. I wrote Sinners, as we're talking, Sinners won some awards yesterday for the Oscars. I wrote an article about Sinners, my thoughts around what I call the praise and panic dilemma, how some people praise the movie and some people panic about the movie, and how Christians can have a different perspective when they evaluate films like that in culture.
What are your thoughts on Sinners? Like, what's the
Very
the
complicated.
meaning?
But yeah, so what, the meaning of the movie?
What are your takeaways from it?
It's a movie about, to me, it's a movie about music. So that's the first thing I think and being that it's a movie about music, I think it does a wonderful job of communicating how music influences, informs, and shapes identity. There's a danger in that, obviously. And I think there was some messaging in that movie that I definitely wouldn't support Christians taking wholesale. Specifically the voodoo, even if it is a part of the African American tradition, that doesn't mean it's right. I think there's there's an aspect of it that I think is actually kind of very dangerous. But with that being said, I think there are other aspects of the film that should be praised. I think the way in which it depicts the African American griot and the storyteller is quite powerful. I think the way it positions certain women in the movie, I think is really dope. As not as you can say, damsels in distress, but as actual heroes, and you don't get that in a lot of films, especially black films. I think the way that it talks about how the cultures have appropriated black art, and to this day we see the appropriation of that. But I also think that movie is a history lesson too. So you learn so much about not only just the Mississippi Delta, but you learn a lot about culture. You learn a lot about relations between Asians and blacks during that time, um, and you learn a lot about the Irish too. And I think there's another. I think, and you talk the historical violence towards not only black folks but Irish people. Um, there is a message in there that you, depending on how you take it, which is when Sammy is being baptized and he's saying the sinner's prayer, not sinner's prayer, he's saying the Lord's prayer, and then the vampire starts to recite the Lord's prayer and basically saying like, that won't help you, that won't do anything for you, because the colonizers know the same prayer. And I think that's to me, the movie in itself is worth that particular sequence for a couple reasons. One, it's an indictment on how Christianity has been appropriated. As we're talking about, the movie is a movie about appropriation, how Christianity has been appropriated for ill purposes. But it also can be, you can see it as maybe an indictment on Christianity. And I heard some people argue that it is, saying like Christianity is illegitimate because of those reasons. But I see it as the opposite, because I say he's the only, well, look, if you haven't seen the movie yet, that's on you, player.
Yeah,
but he's the only one. Yeah, he's the only one that survives and has the wherewithal to go back to the church, even though his decision at the end is not to stay in the church, but he goes back because he recognizes in some ways he's a sinner. And the father warns him. He says, look, this is not the life you want. And everybody else tells him this is not the life you want. And they're trying to keep him from this life of a sinner, if you will, to pursue more godly means. And he sees at the end that he's never satisfied. Even though he's gotten his dream, he says that was still the best day of my life. And I think Ryan Coogler is communicating, though you can chase your dreams, they won't always be satisfying. So I mean, that's just a couple interpretations that I pull from.
And I think that kind of brings us back to the empire idea, right? Yep. Is Satan? I mean, when he tempts Jesus in the wilderness, he tempts him with turn the stone into bread. All these kingdoms could be yours, right? Jump off this temple, the angels will catch you. With 1 John 3 says, the pride of life, the pride of the eyes. It's this is how Satan tempts us. Yes. And so the empire will continue to say, there's something out there apart from God, that will give you joy, and it's never enough and never satisfies. Only God can satisfy at the end of the day.
And the way that you avoid, self-denial is the answer in sinners, but it's also the answer in our lives. The empire is perfect in making it seem like the things that Jesus offers, they offer, but you can't get it unless you get it from them. And so we assume, well, we have to do this because this is the way everybody's done it. Well, at some point you'd be like, well, we don't have to do this. It'll be difficult if we were to detach ourselves from the system. One of the things I'm starting to do, and I've not done a good job at it today, but I bought a dumb phone, if you will. So if in the past 2, 3, 4 weeks, if you text me and it takes me a long time to respond to you, it's because I don't have my iPhone on me, and I'm trying to get to a place where I don't have an iPhone anymore. So if I leave the house, especially when I'm in Atlanta, I'll only take my dumb phone with me. And that means you start realizing the things that you need an iPhone for or a smartphone for. You can't park in the city because you got to scan stuff. You got to pay digitally in a lot of places now. Folks only take Zelle. They don't take cash or card. And so you start to learn how all the things that are tied to a greater system. And in a way, that's the empire. It's like I am intentionally trying to minimalize my life because I recognize what a smartphone does to me when I'm trying to get things done. Like I'm consumed by this thing. And I've seen my life thrive and flourish so much since I've gotten this dumb phone. But I also seen how it's been such an inconvenience. I've gotten lost. because I'm using my GPS everywhere. So it's like now I'm just trying to get to a place. I'm like, oh, I realized I tried to take a shortcut and got lost. But to me, that's getting back to a place of where I'm not dependency on, and this is maybe a stretch, but I'm not dependent on an empire. You know what I mean? And that's, in a sense, that's what it's going to take for us as Christians. It's going to take great sacrifice. You just got to say, I'm willing to deny myself of this convenience in order to live this particular life that I think the gospel calls me to live. And it's not, here's the thing, it's not easy. Like everything I'm thinking about, the stuff that I've talked about earlier today, the things that I know that I want to move my life and my family towards, I like, oh gosh, this is not going to be easy, but I mean, you know, I truly feel a conviction. And in the Romans, I think it's 14 or 15, 14, it talks about like sin is having a conviction or allowing you living, doing things that are against your personal conviction and conscience. And I feel like there are things that I know that I'm sinning because I know I should be doing this, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah. There's something beautiful about the way the Amish live their lives, right?
Yes.
And we even see there's more like reality shows about the Amish lifestyle and so forth. At the end of the day, like nobody really wants to become Amish, right? And give up the electricity and give up your car and your computer and so forth. But we do understand it in the depths of our hearts is that there's something beautiful about that, right?
There's a wonderful article in CT somebody wrote. If you just go to CT, type Amish and loneliness, how there's no such thing as loneliness in the Amish community. It just doesn't happen. And if people do face depression, the ways in which they deal with it are exponentially better than how we deal with it in our world.
Yeah, because you're interdependent upon each other.
Exactly.
You need each other.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, when they build a barn, they do it together.
It solves the problem that I talked about, the visual class distinction of a church. When you walk into a building, you feel like, oh, I don't belong here because they all dress the same. You know what I'm saying? They all look, you know what I'm saying? So granted, as you said, like nobody wants to do that, but there is some ways in which I think we should strive towards that. Now, I'm going to promote a book, but I don't know if I necessarily want people to necessarily read the book because there are some things, but it's called Against the Machine by Paul Kingsnorth. And he's basically, we agree, I would say we definitely agree that the machine is consuming us as Christians, especially. There are some underlying things that I probably wouldn't agree with him on, but overall, like we need to figure out how to detach ourselves from the system, but it has us and it's so convenient to be a part of it. It is so, and it's rewarding because the church believes in it. And so the church rewards us in ways that incentivizes us to stay.
Yeah.
But you are one person, so I told him we'll get to it, but you are one person who I felt has been against it, even if you didn't intentionally. I don't know why you started doing kind of like, there's two things that I just love about your life that you've done since I've known you. One is that you've always had people live with you. Well, three things. You've always had people live with you. You've always lived in a community of need. And then three, I don't know if you've always been a part of like a home church, but I know there was a period of time where you had a home church. And I think what I'm not saying is people should move to the hood and start home churches, but what I will say is that so my brother also had a lot of people live with him. And so my wife and I, we started to do that. We were like, you know what? People should live with us. We don't as of right now though, but then the other thing is, how do we live in close proximity to people so that church is not something that is remote where people drive in and watch online? Like you can see the hurt in someone's face. Like I step outside and I know what Sister Gladys needs. I walk outside, I know what little T is like, hey man, you should be like, there's a real connection there. And then three, I think churches should be small. Like churches should not be the large mega churches. I'm just like, I don't understand it. I just don't understand it. There's so easy for people to get lost in those spaces. And man, I think about how you've lived your life. And though you may, like there's little reward or there's no plaques for the folks like you. You know what I mean? When I think about, I don't honestly, outside of Legacy and maybe some stuff that Hadi's done, I don't know if I've ever seen you like a keynote speaker anywhere. And that to me is a shame. Like that's because if we're talking about what does it look like to do incarnational ministry, to make disciples, like you are a prime example. But here's the thing. I'm kind of glad that you don't get those opportunities, because the moment you start getting those opportunities, then you're too busy flying across the world talking about the good things you're doing, and then you end up stopping doing the good thing.
Yeah. That's honestly been a thing that Heidi and I have wrestled through and thought through, right?
Yeah.
Is even at Legacy Conference, I've done a general session maybe 3 times, out of however many,
Right.
20 years
Right.
almost. And because it's once you get caught in that system, it's hard to stay in the community, right? Because I got to go travel here, I got to go speak at this,
Right.
I got to, and like you said, it's before long you're just platforming what you did in the past as opposed to what you're doing now.
That's a word.
And so I think that's true for all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's how do we John the Baptist said, "I must decrease so that he might increase." I think he lived with this intentionality, because the crowds were coming to him. He was the mega church pastor in that day.
He was.
He was the influencer. And Jesus walks by and he says, "Yo, there's the Lamb of God," always pointing people to him. And then eventually Jesus got all the clout, and John the Baptist was stuck in jail, and people forgot about him, and then he's beheaded.
Yes.
Now I don't want to be beheaded and all that,
Right.
but again, I think it does take intentionality. And you mentioned this again with the empire, like getting away from your smartphone to a dumb phone. Now whether you do that permanently or whether it's just seasonal,
it's going to happen.
I know some people unplug from social media for a month or two, every year. I think we all need to be intentional, at least have seasons.
Yes, absolutely.
Where we're intentionally pulling away. And I think that's the beauty of fasting too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Fasting teaches us, man, I really love food,
Right. Yeah.
And
you said something. You said, John the Baptist was forgotten and beheaded, and you don't want to be beheaded. The one thing that we have to understand and embrace is that we all will be forgotten, though.
Mm-hmm.
But we try to live as if we won't be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember a buddy of mine who, as well, Adam Thomason, we were having a conversation at my house, and I don't know what we were talking about. And I said something. I was like, man, I just had this fear of being forgotten. And he said, "Sure. Don't worry, you will be forgotten." And he said it with such like seriousness, like no chuckles, no LOLs after it. He's like, "No, you will be forgotten."
Mm-hmm.
And let that sink in. And I sat there and I was like, huh. And he was like, I don't know if he said this, but let's just say he did say it. Be cool with that and live your life as if that's okay. Because now that's going to inform the decisions I make now. Mm-hmm. Like if I know I'm going to be forgotten, then I don't need to be on social media every day trying to make sure I keep the algorithm in my favor. It's like, you know what? Okay, well today is not, I don't have anything to share today. You know what's interesting? I actually learned this also from J. Cole. Years ago, J. Cole, I can't remember what album it was, but people were like, "Yo, where do you go in between albums?" And he's like, why do I need to be present when I'm not making any art? Like, there's nothing for me to tell y'all. Like, I'm cool with disappearing. And I was just like, man, I wish I had that kind of, and that's when I started to adopt, like, you know what? I'm going to be cool with just disappearing. And it will be unheard of to hear pastors and Christians say that. To say, you know what? I don't really, I found more pastors are and this is for pastors. Pastors have healthy churches, for what seems to be healthy churches, but they're more concerned with preaching to the people who are not in the pulpit or in the pews. They're more concerned with preaching to people who are live streaming. Mm-hmm. And it's just, to me, it's just such that's the poison of kind of like this social media, this not wanting to be forgotten. You feel like it's my responsibility to pastor everybody. It's like, no, like, I was talking to Santi, the wonderful Santi, who, you want to give some context to who she is for people who are, I don't know, because you've been doing that all day.
She's just a young person, like 23 years
old. Okay,
old.
so she's just a young homie. And we were talking about this social study. I can't remember who put it out, but like the brain, the psychology, our social structures are only built to know 150 people at a time. And we live all of our life to try to not only know more than that, to be known by way more than that. Mm-hmm. And that's not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. And so if that is a true study, if that study is found to be true, then why aren't churches content with being small and saying, no, like, you know what, y'all need to find another church. like, and even if we need to splinter off and start it, like, fine, but we cannot grow more than this particular size, because the moment we allow ourselves to get bigger than this, then, I think Jesus, or God, better yet, does a wonderful job of dispersing people. We see it in Babel. We see it in Acts. As soon as it gets to a point where it starts swelling too much, it's like, whether it be persecution, whether it be judgment, whether it be mission, like, go out, spread. Yeah.
Good. Well, I appreciate the conversation. Again, 21 years of
dope,
history, and growing up together, and, thankful for your life, your encouragement, we were talking earlier, you're a challenger. You've always pushed people around you to be better, to think better. And so
it's
while it's a pain in the butt every once in a while,
we had a little falling out. I think you and I had a little falling out for a couple years.
I was trying to remember what it was about. I just remember going out on my front porch and us, hashing some stuff out.
I was visiting that weekend, and I don't know why. Somehow I stopped by your house because I wasn't in, and I remember us stepping outside and having a nice little hard talk. And then one day I got an invite to the Legacy. I was like, oh, I guess he still likes me.
I think this is a lesson for everybody watching: is take care of your issues.
Amen.
Again, it was nothing.
I really
major.
don't remember either.
Yeah. But yeah, we don't need to cut everybody off.
We don't. Come on,
let's work through it. We all get better because
reconciliation, huh? It is the job of the Christian to be reconciled.
But thank you for joining us.
Thank you, man, for having me.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Legacy Disciple Podcast. We encourage you to be a disciple who makes disciples. Until next time, grace and peace.
Thank you for checking out today's episode of the Legacy Disciple Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about our ministry, upcoming conferences, or partnering with us, head to our website at legacydisciple.org. We also encourage you to follow us online at Legacy Disciple on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, continue to be a disciple that makes disciples.